Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of the Contrarian. We're thrilled to have back with us Representative Dan Goldman. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, Jen. Great to be back with you.
Good to see you as well. We are seeing a really extraordinary amount of invective, incitement, if you will, from the president and from his henchman, Stephen Miller, not only about cities and about the forces that they're deploying there, but about judges themselves. This is pretty unprecedented. And you got into it the other day with Stephen Miller. What's going on and how problematic do you think this is?
There's a lot going on, and it's very problematic. I think what everybody needs to realize is that the federal government is now being run by Stephen Miller and Russ Vought. Donald Trump will get involved occasionally, it seems like, but by all accounts, Stephen Miller is running the Department of Justice, and Pam Bondi is a figurehead that is acting at his direction and occasionally goes on Fox News. And so all of the immigration policy, all of the militarization, not only of ICE, but of our National Guard and our cities, is being driven by Stephen Miller, who is out of control. I don't know where all of his anger and vitriol and hatred comes from, but it's really deep-seated. And the reason why that's a problem is that he is effectively running our immigration and administration, executive agencies. And if he has a deep-seated hatred for immigrants, which he has demonstrated over the years, then he's not interested in operating under the rule of law, following due process, actually selecting those who have criminal records and should be deported, as he promised on the campaign when he said the worst of the worst, but actually arresting and detaining people who are here lawfully, applying for asylum or other lawful pathways to come into this country. You add to that this inflammatory language about the attacks on ICE, which I have not seen other evidence to nearly to support the allegations coming from the Department of Homeland Security, the masks, the lack of identification, the lack of due process, and then with the militarization of the National Guard and completely making up out of whole cloth that there is a need for the military to go into our cities, which not only is prohibited by law, but is just fundamentally anti-democratic, is an attack on really the basics of this country. And I think it's getting worse and worse. They're projecting more and more as if the Democrats are doing this, and then they're responsible for all of what's going on, when it's really just driven by them.
So essentially what you're saying is the violence, the chaos, the vitriol is the feature. It's not a bug of the system. So when we're asking, well, isn't this counterproductive, or aren't they trying to, administer the immigration system in a decent, humane, and sensible way? You seem to be saying, no, they're really not interested in that. Listen to what they're saying. And that's what we're getting on the streets.
Yeah, that's right, because it is part of their broader effort to usurp all power of the federal government in the White House. And what is scary about that is, and you mentioned it about the judges, they not only have cowed all of the congressional Republicans to be silent and complicit in their lawlessness, their attacks on the separation of powers, the fundamental constitutional values that we have. But they're going after judges, which is the only other branch that can be a check on them. And they're trying to intimidate those judges by inflaming their base, which will then dox them and threaten them. A couple months ago, I heard a statistic that a third of federal judges have received, or their families have received some sort of a threat. And it's an effort at intimidation, so that they will not stand up to this lawless government. And it is the ultimate in authoritarian power. And that's what they're trying to do. And they're trying to focus on law and order and immigration because they think those are the issues where they have an edge. But what they are doing is not resolving or helping our immigration system, and it is not making any of our cities any safer.
On Monday, Stephen Miller in particular had a complete meltdown after Judge Emmergut, who is a Trump appointee, I want to keep emphasizing, ruled not just once, but twice against his effort to deploy National Guard to Portland. And he was essentially frothing at the mouth, saying no judge has the right to do this. And he later was asked about racial profiling. And instead of answering the question, he said, well, that's a stupid question. I'm not answering that, and attacked the interviewer. What do those kinds of responses tell you about where they're going next, or how they intend to react when they are rebuffed by a judge, even a Republican judge like Emmergut?
This is they're pushing the envelope further and further. And that what we are seeing is it's not only the vitriol, the threats, the intimidation, but they are pushing further and further to defy court orders. And what Judge Immergut said in her second order is that the administration, the White House, blatantly defied her original order by trying to do an end run around which state's National Guard would go in, as if that were made a difference to the legal analysis, which of course it doesn't. They are projecting this notion that no judges should be able to intervene or stop something that the president believes is good policy. It is the most absurd argument I could ever come up with, because of course that is exactly what the judiciary's role is to interpret what the law is, what the law allows for and doesn't allow for. And the idea that just because the president says that he wants to do something, that therefore it is lawful, is a dictatorship. I mean, that is the definition of a dictatorship. And that's the premise that they're operating on, which is so fundamentally contradictory to how this country has lived for 250 years. And that's what's troubling, is it's this persuasion of many people to believe that whatever Donald Trump says goes. And that's where they're going with all of this.
I think you're exactly right. It is interesting that at least in the lower courts, there's much more inclination now to look under the hood. And as Judge Immergut says, when you're untethered to the facts, you don't get any kind of deference. You don't get any kind of presumption of regularity here. So that is at least encouraging. Whether the Supreme Court follows that lead or not is, I think, the big open question. Let me shift gears to the shutdown. We're over a week into this now. You're getting mixed messages from the president. He is talking to Democrats. He wants to talk to Democrats. No, he's really not talking to Democrats. What are you hearing from your colleagues? Are they looking at the same polls? Are they getting nervous that they're really on the wrong side of this issue?
No, I think we across the board feel very confident that the American people understand we are fighting for them. And they understand that they're in the minority, which we are in both sides of the Capitol. We only have certain moments of leverage. And this is one of those. We had no leverage with the big ugly bill. We could do nothing to stop them because they only needed 50 votes in the Senate. But with the filibuster, they need Democratic votes. Notably, Donald Trump didn't understand that or know that or recognize that a couple of weeks ago, which calls into question significantly, I think, his cognitive abilities right now. But this is the time when we can not only fight for the American people, but we can achieve results for the American people. And what we are fighting for is very simple. It is healthcare for those who need it most in this country and those who need the government assistance to just get basic healthcare. And we feel very good that that is a noble and righteous argument. It is a noble and righteous cause, and that we are at the point right now when we have to stand firm and make sure that we get results. And nobody wants a shutdown. It's awful, and it's going to get worse as people start not getting paychecks, and we start having problems with TSA and air traffic control, and people can't get flights. It's going to have a trickle down and broad impact, and it is terrible. But I think what I believe, and we have to recognize, is this is short-term pain. Generally, with all shutdowns, the federal employees get back pay. So it is a function of making sure they can get by while they wait for that. But the long-term benefits of rolling back this Republican healthcare crisis that they have created is much, much more significant in the long term for the American people. And we're standing strong, and you're even hearing some of the Democratic senators who had voted for the Republican bill now talking about maybe they will switch back because the Republicans refuse to negotiate with Democrats, even though they need Democratic votes.
One event that may kind of break loose some of this is that a lot of people are going to get their notices to re-up on their insurance. They're going to get their notices that suddenly they got new prices to pay for the healthcare that they buy, the coverage they buy through the exchange under the Obamacare. Do you think that is going to make any dent in this once people start literally getting the bill for what this is going to cost them?
Absolutely. And it is starting to happen. The people who would be affected by the expiration of these tax subsidies are going to have their premiums more than double. Many will just simply not be able to afford healthcare anymore, even though it would be accessible to them. But if they don't have those tax subsidies because they don't, because of where their income level is, they are going to lose healthcare. And that's in addition to many other millions who will lose healthcare. Overall, the premiums are going to go up about 20% for all of the exchange recipients. That's more than 20 million people who will be impacted by that. And when you see those premiums come and you start looking at the bottom line, it's going to be quite clear what we're fighting for. And I think that's going to have a big impact. And I think you see it because the president is even talking now and floating the idea of, well, he knows he's on the wrong side of this issue. And he's trying to say, no, Republicans care about healthcare. I care about healthcare. And that's not a good negotiating position for him to be in.
Well, Dan, thank you as always. We love chatting with you. You are doing yeoman's work. I sometimes wonder and worry how you go to work every day to listen to your colleagues. But you have to have selective hearing, I guess, sometimes. But thank you. And we will look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Jen.
Take care.